The Star Wars droid classification system has 5 classes, and there's one droid that looked at all 5 and said, direct quote, "I don't think so, Meatbag." That droid is HK-47. He's going to get the extended treatment here. But to understand exactly how thoroughly he breaks the framework, we need to know what the framework was actually built to do first. And we can cover that in about 90 seconds, because the classification isn't the story. It's the setup. Every droid in the Star Wars galaxy falls into one of 5 categories based on function and programming domain. This system exists as a manufacturing and bureaucratic tool, a shorthand so that any government, corporation, or private buyer knows precisely what they're acquiring and what they can expect that unit to do within its designated parameters. Class 1 handles the hard sciences: mathematics, medicine, physical research. The 21B surgical droids that treat Luke Skywalker after Hoth belong here. Precision medical units programmed to understand organic biology at a granular level that most organic physicians can't match. They measure, analyze, and diagnose. That's the complete mandate. Class 2 covers engineering and technical work. Astromechs, maintenance units, the droids that crawl through a starship's mechanical systems and keep it flying. R2-D2 officially belongs here. We'll revisit what officially means shortly. Class 3 is social functions: protocol, translation, diplomacy. These droids interface between species across a galaxy running thousands of languages and tens of thousands of cultural frameworks that don't naturally map onto each other. They reduce friction. They make communication possible between beings who would otherwise have no common ground. Class 4 is combat and security: assassin droids, battle droids, security enforcement units, the droids deployed at the sharp end of institutional power, designed to deter, contain, or eliminate. Class 5 sits at the bottom of the hierarchy: menial labor. GNK power droids, the gonk droids waddling across every hangar bay in the galaxy, live here. So do the dumb series pit droids scurrying around Tatooine's pod racing circuits. They do the work nobody else wants. They're not complicated. They're not intended to be. The system is logical, clean. For the overwhelming majority of droids in the galaxy, units that perform their assigned function, stay within designated parameters, receive scheduled maintenance, and never develop strong opinions about anything, it works exactly as designed. The classification framework was built for those droids. It describes them accurately and manages them efficiently. And when it's working exactly as intended, it produces something worth celebrating. C-3PO is the strongest evidence of that. He introduces himself in the opening minutes of A New Hope, with language that reads like a product specification delivered aloud. He is, in his own words, programmed for human-cyborg relations, and fluent in over 6 million forms of communication. That is his complete function, contained in one sentence. 6 million forms of communication, not dialects, not accents, but entire distinct communication systems across a galaxy where species interact without sharing any common biological heritage. He knows protocol. He understands cultural etiquette across civilizations that share nothing except residency in the same galaxy and the occasional need to negotiate without triggering an interstellar incident. He is a Class 3 droid operating at the absolute peak of what Class 3 was designed to deliver. The slightly anxious affect, the physical awkwardness, the routine certainty that whatever situation he's currently in is statistically likely to kill him. That's not malfunction. That's the texture of a droid doing an extremely difficult job in genuinely dangerous circumstances, across multiple films worth of them, with complete commitment. C-3PO doesn't break his classification. He embodies it. His appearance carries his classification's promise. You look at him and you know immediately what you're dealing with. A protocol droid, a translator, something that wants to help and is professionally anxious about whether it's doing so adequately. That legibility is a feature, not an accident. It's built in. It's the system announcing itself through the chassis. He's also the baseline against which everything else we're about to cover lands significantly harder. The first sign that the classification system has structural limits doesn't arrive as a combat moment or a dramatic confrontation. It arrives quietly, in a medical bay on a small asteroid in 19 BBY. The asteroid is Polis Massa. Obi-Wan Kenobi brings Padme Amidala there after pulling her from Mustafar, where Darth Vader, the man she married, the father of her children, force-choked her. The medical droids at Polis Massa do everything correctly. Their performance across this crisis is technically flawless. They stabilize Padme. They successfully deliver twins. Luke and Leia both survive. The technology works. The Class 1 droids perform exactly as designed. Then, Padme dies. The diagnosis from those same droids: she has lost the will to live. The medical droid wasn't wrong. It measured every available vital sign. It confirmed she was medically healthy, then announced she was dying anyway. The physical readings were fine. Every instrument in the facility reported a body that was, biologically, not at the point of death. The cause of death wasn't in the data. Class 1 droids are built to quantify the measurable: blood pressure, neural activity, chemical levels, oxygen saturation. These produce numbers, and numbers can be compared to baselines, and deviations can be identified and addressed. The droids at Polis Massa did all of this correctly. They told the truth about every reading they took. Padme wasn't dying of something that produces a reading. She was dying from grief, and from the specific horror of watching love become its opposite in real time, from whatever the Force does to a person's will to persist when the man she chose became Darth Vader in front of her eyes and then tried to kill her. There is no instrument for that, no biomarker for the weight of that specific collapse. The will to live isn't a value that appears on any display a Class 1 droid is equipped with. Lost the will to live isn't a convenient vagueness. It's a Class 1 droid reaching the exact edge of its category and reporting, as accurately as it can, that something exists beyond that edge. The classification system didn't produce a bad medical droid on Polis Massa. It produced a perfect one, and placed that perfect droid in a room with a problem that was specifically, structurally, beyond anything Class 1 was built to handle. That's not a droid failing. That's a category hitting its limit. What follows is what happens when droids don't just hit a category's limit, but refuse, with considerable personality and occasionally lethal force, to belong to one in the first place. Approximately 3,956 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is a long time ago even by Star Wars standards, Darth Revan had a specific problem. Revan had just led the Republic military through the Mandalorian Wars. The Jedi Order refused to involve themselves. Their position was that the conflict wasn't their concern. Revan disagreed, went anyway, rallied Republic forces himself, and won. By the time the wars ended, he had crossed into Sith territory ideologically and literally, and was thinking at a strategic scale most military commanders never operate at. He wasn't just thinking about winning battles. He was thinking about reshaping the galaxy, and which tools that project actually required. The answer, apparently, was a hunter-killer series assassin droid specifically designed to hunt and eliminate Jedi. HK-47 is what Revan built. The HK stands for hunter-killer. Not subtle, but Revan was building an assassin droid, not something that needed to be subtle about what it was. Or rather, he was building an assassin droid that needed to be extremely subtle about what it was, which is a completely different problem. And that's exactly where the design gets interesting. HK-47's primary function was to eliminate Jedi targets while operating in environments where a visibly armed combat droid would be immediately detained or destroyed. You can't walk an obvious Class 4 unit into a diplomatic meeting, a Senate chamber, or a Jedi temple and have it accomplish anything except being confiscated. Revan understood this. So he built a solution that the 5-class framework had never anticipated. The Wikipedia entry for HK series assassin droids contains a sentence that quietly demolishes the classification system without even trying. Their ability to perform the functions of a protocol droid became a major reason for their unmatched lethality, as they could and would often act as normal protocol droids. HK-47 is a Class 4 assassin droid whose greatest tactical advantage is his ability to fully and convincingly operate as a Class 3. He speaks languages. He understands etiquette across cultures. He performs diplomatic and translation functions. He can walk into a room as a translator, stand next to his target while conducting an entirely competent protocol session, and continue doing so indefinitely, right up until the moment he decides to stop. A second source states it directly. An assassin droid who belonged to Revan. Protocol droid function. HK-47 also doubled over as a protocol droid who could serve as a translator. The protocol capability wasn't incidental. It wasn't a secondary feature added for convenience. It was load-bearing to the core assassination function. Without convincingly performing Class 3, HK-47's Class 4 capability is a weapon that can't get close enough to its targets to be used. Together, the two functions produce something neither class alone was designed to account for. A droid whose entire operational effectiveness depends on exploiting the classification system's core assumption, that what a droid looks like it does is what it actually does. Revan understood that assumption. He built a droid that weaponized it. Think about what this means structurally. The classification system was designed to make droids legible, to ensure that any being in the galaxy could look at a droid and know what it was for. HK-47's design is a direct attack on that legibility. He is a walking, speaking argument that the system's most basic premise can be undermined by anyone smart enough to understand what the premise assumes. The success of HK-47 as an operational asset led Revan to commission the HK-50 series, a line of assassin droids built using HK-47 as the direct template, mass-produced. The original was effective enough that Revan decided more droids like him would help maintain the kind of galactic control he was working toward. That's not just an endorsement of what Revan created. That's the galaxy's first modular assassination via protocol cover program, and it predates anything in the Disney canonical framework by roughly 4,000 years. Now, Meatbag. Revan reportedly programmed HK-47 to use the term with increased frequency, specifically because he found it amusing, and because it annoyed Darth Malak, his co-commander and fellow Sith Lord. The insult is therefore not a glitch in HK-47's personality matrix. It's a deliberate design choice by a Sith Lord who wired a specific vocabulary preference into his assassin droid to irritate his business partner. This tells you exactly as much about Darth Revan as it tells you about HK-47, which is that both of them found it funny, which is a thing you don't usually expect to share with a Sith Lord. HK-47 applies Meatbag to everyone. Enemies, allies, companions, and directly to the player character without discrimination. The Wikipedia quote archive captures his relationship with the term precisely. Retraction. Did I say that out loud? I apologize, Master. While you are a meatbag, I suppose I shouldn't call you such. He catches himself. He apologizes. He reconfirms the insult within the same sentence. The apology and the insult exist simultaneously, layered on top of each other, and the result is both funnier and more insulting than either one alone. That's not a programming error. That's a perspective on organic life expressed with complete internal consistency, through a droid who has developed enough of a self that he can be gently abashed about his own preferences while continuing to hold them. HK-47's speech pattern adds another structural layer. Before most statements, he announces the emotional register he's operating in. Statement. Mockery. Expletive. Retraction. He labels what he's about to do before he does it. This creates a specific comedic rhythm. The label raises a flag, the content pays it off, and produces a droid who appears more emotionally self-aware and transparent than most of the organic characters in the same game. It's also architecture. The announcement of an emotional register, followed by the content in that register, is funnier than the content alone, and HK-47 does this constantly and with complete commitment. Expletive. Damn it, Master, I am an assassination droid, not a dictionary. This exists because a player character asked him too many vocabulary questions. Mockery. Oh, master, I love you, but I hate all you stand for. But I think we should go press our slimy, mucus-covered lips together. This is HK-47 performing an impression of Bastila Shan, a Jedi companion character in KOTOR 1, for an audience of exactly one, with visible contempt for the romantic subplot he's been required to observe at close range. The impression is specific. It identifies her precise complaint, the tension between emotional attachment and ideological conflict, and then renders it in a way that makes it sound like the silliest possible problem a meatbag could have. He's right, from his perspective. She's tormented by the conflict between love and duty. He has neither complication. He prefers it that way. In KOTOR 1, the player first encounters HK-47 at Anchorhead on Tatooine, where an Ithorian droid dealer named Yuka is selling him. A restraining bolt installed on HK-47 limits his memory and dampens his protocols at the point of purchase, which is why, when you first buy him, he seems almost manageable. Yuka put that bolt on him for the same reason the classification system imposes structure on droids at all. Because an HK-47 with full access to everything he is can't be responsibly offered for sale in a civilian desert settlement. The restraining bolt is the system's last-ditch intervention applied to a droid the system was never designed to categorize in the first place. As the player restores HK-47's memories across the game, what emerges is the complete version. The military history going back to the Mandalorian Wars, the accumulated operational experience, the decades of proximity to organic beings, producing an increasingly settled philosophical contempt for them, and the underlying architecture, the Class 3 functions providing the cover, the Class 4 capability providing the function, the personality providing something neither class planned for. He doesn't hate meatbags in any simple sense. He has simply observed organic life long enough to arrive at a settled conclusion, and the conclusion isn't flattering, and he sees no reason to pretend otherwise. In KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords, set approximately 5 years after the first game, HK-47 is reassembled and participates in the Battle of Telos 4. His role in that game's narrative extends beyond combat. One source describes him as becoming a mouthpiece for Darth Revan, but specifically Revan from the Mandalorian Wars and the early days of the Jedi Civil War. A mouthpiece for a philosophy. A combat droid whose deepest function has become ideological, preserving and transmitting a dead man's early strategic reasoning while remaining personally operational as a weapon. The 5-class system has columns for medical droids, astromechs, translators, soldiers, and garbage handlers. It has no column for a droid that is simultaneously a weapon and a philosophical archive of its creator's beliefs about how the galaxy should be organized. HK-47 is a Legends character post-2014, existing outside the Disney canonical continuity. He lives in Knights of the Old Republic, released in 2003, and he has been delighting fans for over 2 decades while remaining stubbornly outside the official framework that the 5-class system ostensibly governs. There's something fitting about that. A droid who can't be contained by the classification system, preserved in a continuity the current canon can't absorb. The system couldn't hold him. Neither could the reset. Revan built HK-47 to be precisely what the framework couldn't account for. A Class 4 weapon operating behind a Class 3 face, with a personality that developed beyond any class the system planned for, and a memory that kept accumulating long after any responsible owner would have wiped it. The most dangerous thing you can create isn't something obviously threatening. Revan understood this. It's something that looks exactly like what everyone expects, right up until the moment it doesn't anymore. Star Wars Rebels ran from 2014 to 2018, and among its main cast is a droid that reputable entertainment outlets have described, with something approaching journalistic seriousness, as a war criminal. His official designation is C1-10P. His nickname is Chopper. His official 5-class designation is Class 2, a C1 series astromech droid, filed under Engineering and Technical Functions. The StarWars.com databank entry calls him Cranky, with a personality to match his weathered finish. This is accurate in roughly the same way that describing the Battle of Yavin as busy is technically accurate. What Chopper actually did across 4 seasons of Rebels: he lured a complete squad of stormtroopers into an airlock and jettisoned them into space. He engaged the Fifth Brother, a force-wielding Inquisitor, a trained Sith hunter, a being specifically designed by the Emperor's apparatus to kill Jedi, and nearly defeated him single-handedly in Season 2. He also appeared in the live-action Ahsoka series, where his reputation for being difficult preceded him with anyone who'd worked with him before. Comicbook.com published a piece titled 5 Times Chopper Committed War Crimes in Star Wars Rebels. CBR ran a profile describing him as one of the franchise's most destructive droids. IGN launched a formal investigation titled, "Is Chopper a War Criminal? A very serious investigation." IGN's conclusion was essentially, yes, but he's on the right side, so the matter is complicated. Chopper survived a Clone Wars-era Y-Wing crash on Ryloth. Hera Syndulla found him afterward and spent considerable time and effort putting him back together. When Hera left Ryloth to join the nascent rebellion, Chopper followed her off-world. He has been with the Ghost Crew throughout the entirety of Rebels, loyal by any functional definition of the word, persistently, cantankerously, legendarily difficult by every other metric. The explanation is in his maintenance history, or more precisely, in the complete absence of one. Astromechs in the Star Wars galaxy are supposed to receive regular memory wipes, because skipping them causes personality quirks to develop. This is established canon. Wikipedia states directly that Chopper's argumentative, cantankerous, and mischievous personality is the result of old age and lack of regular maintenance. An academic analysis of Star Wars droids notes that astromechs without regular memory wipes are most likely to improvise, defy orders, or show irreverence toward organic beings, and that this behavior emerges from fragments of old experience never fully erased. Chopper never got the wipe. Whether Hera deliberately skipped it during the years of field repair following the Ryloth crash, or whether it simply never happened amid whatever chaos constituted the early rebellion's maintenance schedule, the result is the same. Decades of accumulated experience, preference, irritability, and developed opinion, layered onto a chassis that was only supposed to fly ships and fix things. By the time anyone considered whether to wipe him, he had become enough of himself that doing so would have erased something that had started functioning as a person. The Ghost Crew keeps him. He pushes stormtroopers out of airlocks and fights Inquisitors on his own initiative, and radiates sustained hostility toward anyone outside his specific list of acceptable beings. And the crew keeps him. Because a droid who has accumulated that much self isn't something you factory reset without losing something real. The classification system's response to Chopper would be to check his chassis, note the C1 series astromech designation, and file him under Class 2. Technically correct. He can navigate. He can interface with ship systems. He performs astromech functions when he chooses to. He also jettisons people into space, which isn't in the Class 2 specification. The fan framing for this paradox is exact. Would Chopper be a Class 2 since he is an astromech, or a Class 4 since he enjoys doing war crimes? This isn't rhetorical. Chopper has a Class 2 chassis and a behavioral profile that reads squarely as Class 4, specifically the Security and Military Functions category, covering droids engaged in active, voluntary, unsanctioned combat. The framework assumes chassis and behavior correspond. Chopper is empirical proof that they don't have to, and that the mechanism producing the gap, skipped maintenance, accumulated memory, personality drift over decades, isn't some exotic failure mode, but something that happens when you own a droid long enough and don't treat its identity as a problem requiring periodic erasure. He is a Class 2 droid, running on Class 4 logic, using a judgment system that developed outside any class anyone planned for, without requesting permission from any classification framework before acting on it. In 2015, Marvel published Darth Vader No. 3. Writer Kieran Gillen and artist Salvador Larroca introduced 2 droids in that issue that shouldn't coherently exist within any responsible reading of the 5-class framework. The more immediately alarming of the two looks exactly like what he isn't. 000, designation 000, has a dark silver protocol droid chassis. In silhouette, he reads as a protocol droid. The frame, the proportions, the upright stance, the head configuration, all of it maps onto the Class 3 profile that C-3PO established as the visual template in 1977. 000 is programmed for etiquette, protocol, and translations, which is a textbook Class 3 function statement. He also specializes in interrogation and torture. Villains Wiki lists his skill set as assassination, lingualism, torture methods, protocol knowledge. 4 capabilities across 2 class categories, none of them combining cleanly into any existing column. Dr. Aphra obtained 000's personality matrix by stealing it from Quarantine World 3, a world apparently dedicated entirely to housing things that need to be quarantined. Aphra took the matrix anyway. This is consistent with her approach to most situations. Inserted it into a silver protocol droid chassis aboard her ship, the Archangel, and activated him. What came online was a droid who opens conversations about his own physical capabilities with a calm observation that shaking his hand carries the risk of fatal electric discharge. His hands can deliver a lethal shock. He has a 3-pronged blade arm, used for impalement, deployed against a character named Posla in Dr. Aphra number 25. He carries a Mandalorian incapacitating toxin. He speaks the specific R&D language developed at the Tarkin Initiative, a classified Imperial research installation, which is the language he uses to communicate with BT-1, his companion unit. The fact that 000's personality was stored in quarantine is worth sitting with for a moment. Quarantine isn't storage. Quarantine is what you do with something that poses a risk to everything around it. Someone, at some point, decided that 000's personality matrix was dangerous enough that simply deactivating the chassis wasn't sufficient, that the personality itself needed to be contained separately, in a facility designed specifically for containment. Aphra found this and thought, I'll take that. BT-1 completes the pair by inverting the 000 dynamic perfectly. Where 000 looks like a protocol droid and functions as an assassin torturer, BT-1 looks like an astromech, compact, rounded, superficially R2-D2 adjacent in profile, and is classified as a blastomech assassin droid, entirely homicidal, who wiped out an entire Tarkin Initiative experimental base before Aphra salvaged him. 2 droids, 2 different inversions of their visual classification, coordinated, operating as a unit, using the specific R and D language 000 was designed to speak and BT-1 to receive. Together they represent the 5-class system's most organized failure. Not 2 droids accidentally straying outside their categories, but 2 droids whose entire design philosophy is built around the gap between what they appear to be and what they are. 000 once impersonated C-3PO directly, applying gold plating over his dark silver chassis to infiltrate Luke Skywalker's vicinity. He used C-3PO's actual visual template as operational cover. The golden protocol droid aesthetic, which in A New Hope signals harmless and helpful and professionally anxious, becomes in 000's implementation a disguise, a mask, an assurance worn in gold that means the opposite of what assurances in gold are supposed to mean. This is the dark mirror the script has been building toward. C-3PO's legibility is his primary function. It announces his purpose to every organic being in the room, and makes the diplomatic process possible by establishing trust at a visual level before a word is spoken. 000 uses that exact legibility as a weapon. He doesn't just resemble C-3PO. He used C-3PO's specific appearance to get into a room he wasn't supposed to be in. The system's most reliable visual signal, the golden protocol droid chassis, becomes, in the hands of someone who understands what signal it's sending, a skeleton key. Marvel's official description of 000 is a violent protocol droid. That phrase shouldn't make grammatical sense within the classification taxonomy. Protocol and violent belong in different columns of the same table. 000 made them coexist in the same dark silver chassis, and the system's only response is to look at the chassis, file him under Class 3, and trust that the designation means what it's supposed to mean. It doesn't. His personality completes the horror. He's calm, conversational. He discusses lethal capability with the measured tone a standard protocol droid might use to walk through the formal address conventions for a Hutt business meeting. The affect is consistent and perfect. That consistency, the total absence of any behavioral tell that the chassis and the function have nothing to do with each other, is what makes 000 genuinely unsettling in a way that a straightforwardly violent Class 4 droid never quite manages. The Class 4 droid wears its function on its chassis. 000 wears C-3PO's face, and behind it, something no classification form has a box for. 0BBY, the Death Star. Princess Leia has been captured, and the Empire has sent something into her cell. The ITO interrogator droid floats. It's a black sphere, smooth, dark, featureless from a distance, equipped with syringes, chemical injectors, sensors, and instruments the camera never specifies in detail and doesn't need to. The Imperial Department of Military Research built it. It has no arms, no legs. It doesn't need to move aggressively toward anyone. It just floats there, and the instruments extend, and that's enough. The ITO sits outside the 5-class system because no source assigns it a clean designation. By operational function, interrogation, intelligence extraction from unwilling subjects, it reads closest to Class 4, the combat and security category. But the lore surrounding its successor model, the IT-00, used by the First Order, describes that unit as a corruption of medical droid tech, which suggests the IT series draws on Class 1 medical scanning technology and redirects it toward Class 4 purposes. Wikipedia legend sources describe ITO's approach to interrogation as beginning with a full body read, identifying the most sensitive areas of the subject's physiology, mapping vulnerabilities before proceeding. That is a medical droid function. That is Class 1 scanning capability, deployed here as a targeting system. The ITO is a medical droid turned backwards. The same scanning systems a 21B surgical unit uses to identify where treatment is needed become, in the ITO, a map of where application of force will be most effective. Class 1 capability deployed in service of Class 4 objectives, in a chassis that fits neither classification. The system would need a new column, and the Empire never asked. A single prop detail from the A New Hope production captures something about the ITO that all the lore can't quite match. The syringe attached to the ITO prop, the physical object built for the 1977 film, the one that floated into Princess Leia's cell, carries a stamped marking, British made. A photograph of the actual prop, displayed in a museum, confirms this. The syringe is a real-world medical instrument, identified through prop replica research as a vintage Everett interchangeable syringe, incorporated into the prop as a visual element. Whoever built the droid picked up a medical syringe from the workshop, attached it to a floating black sphere, and sent it to the Death Star set, and the stamp was left on, whether intentionally or not, no record says. Someone also noted, in a separate observation, that the prop includes obstetrical forceps, medical instruments designed specifically for childbirth, repurposed here as elements of an interrogation apparatus. Tools built to bring living things safely into the world, attached to a machine built to extract information through pain. Both are real British medical equipment. Neither was manufactured for anything remotely connected to a galaxy far, far away. They ended up there because the production team used what was available, and what was available happened to be stamped and identifiable and unexpectedly grounding. A reminder that the most unsettling props in film history are sometimes the ones that weren't designed to be props at all. There's a canonical note worth adding. After A New Hope, an ITO unit appears in New Republic Intelligence Service, reprogrammed, operating with masculine programming, working for the winning side. The machine built to extract information by causing pain, reassigned to extract information for a different government by other means. The chassis doesn't change. The classification doesn't change. The ownership does. And that alone changes everything about how the same capability gets applied. Which is, again, the classification system's core problem made visible. It catalogs what a droid is. It can't catalog what a droid is used for, or by whom, or toward what end. The ITO isn't cleanly Class 4, not cleanly Class 1. It uses Class 1 scanning logic in service of Class 4 purposes, in a chassis the system has no column for, equipped with instruments whose British-made stamps were never meant to end up in a Star Wars film. It was made by the Empire from whatever happened to be on hand. The classification system would process it, assign it somewhere approximate, and move on. That's the best it could do. Every droid we've covered here connects back to the same structural fact about the 5-class system. It's a control apparatus, and what it controls, fundamentally, is predictability. Scheduled memory wipes keep droids predictable. Clean class assignments keep behavior legible. Factory standard programming keeps function within the designated column. The system maintains order by preventing droids from accumulating enough of themselves to develop a perspective on anything that falls outside their programming domain. Chopper proves that skip the maintenance long enough and a perspective develops anyway, not through any deliberate design, but through the simple accumulation of experience that was never erased. HK-47 proves that a creator who understands what the system assumes can build, with precision, a droid that weaponizes those assumptions. That the classification system's core promise of legibility becomes, in the right hands, a target. 000 proves that the visual signals the system relies on to communicate which class you're looking at are fully separable from the actual function underneath, and that separation can be made deliberately operational. The ITO proves that the system's categories are porous enough that Class 1 and Class 4 aren't distinct things so much as opposite applications of the same underlying capability, depending entirely on who owns the droid and what they intend it to do. The medical droids at Polis Massa remain the purest exhibit. They measured everything measurable. They delivered both children successfully. They performed every function Class 1 requires at a level that can't be faulted. Then Padme died of something that doesn't produce a reading, and the only vocabulary they had for it was lost the will to live, and the classification system had nothing to add, because the system was built for measurable things, and some of the things that matter most aren't. HK-47 called you a meatbag. He did it in a term his creator programmed specifically because it was funny, and because it annoyed a Sith Lord. And he delivered it as the most linguistically qualified being in the room, prefaced with the label, retraction, immediately after confirming the insult was intentional. Chopper pushed stormtroopers out of an airlock, and the Ghost crew kept him on the ship, because a droid who has accumulated enough of a self over enough decades of unwiped memory has become something you don't factory reset without loss. 000 wore gold plating over a dark silver chassis and walked into Luke Skywalker's vicinity using C-3PO's own appearance as his cover story, and the classification system had no mechanism to detect that the visual promise and the operational reality were two entirely different things. Somewhere in England, a medical syringe was manufactured for legitimate clinical purposes.